Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Today with Ray. I'm your host, Rayma T, and this is the show that highlights everyday entrepreneurs. This week, I'm here with Chris Husek from Husek Fencing Bros.
Husek Brothers Fensing, but very close.
I will see. I'm off track. So, but we're okay. We're gonna get through this interview off camera. But Chris made it known that he got a fresh haircut for this interview today. So make sure you hit the like button and comment down below. Fresh with the fire signs, all of that. Make sure you also subscribe to the channel so that you'll be the first ones to know when a new episode comes out. Chris, I definitely just put you on the spot, but how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a good day. Yeah, Fridays can be a little stressful for me sometimes, but this one's been good. So.
Good. I'm so happy that you came on the show. We were off camera joking about the name and how this is not the fencing of jousting days. This is not boosting stolen products, but backyard fences.
Backyard fences.
Yeah.
There are days when we want a sword fight with each other. But,
of course.
So far, we haven't done it, but we'll make a commercial like that one day, probably.
Right? Yeah, that would be like not the... Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. That happens sometimes. So, as we open up this interview, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how it is that you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so this is something that I have two brothers, so I'm in the middle, the mediator of the family.
Of course.
So my younger brother, he's 4 years younger than me, and he has always been like the entrepreneur, salesman, like since he was a kid.
Okay.
Always finding a way to make money and, do those types of things. But I got into home improvement sales, so selling exterior projects like fencing, siding, windows, roofing, those types of things. And I did that for 6 years or so.
Okay.
And in that, it was a really great entry into the industry for me, but definitely didn't want to be stuck in in-home sales forever. And so my younger brother and I, he got into that same industry about 2 years later than I did. And we just, we always talked about like, one day we're going to do something for ourselves, and didn't quite know what it was. But after several years of bouncing ideas back and forth, we finally decided it was time. So.
I like that. And when you say it was time, what year was that?
So that was kind of the end of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. So coming, in the fall, winter of 2021 is when we really started to get serious. And actually, on the side, we were starting to do some of the back end stuff to get ready to go into business for ourselves.
Okay.
And then coming into 2022 is when some more things happened with the jobs that we were working that just kind of pushed us to be like, now is the time for us to do this. And so
I appreciate that. And it's interesting because when we talk about like the entry, the taking, the leap, a lot of it is that like slow climb to the edge before you're like, okay, it's finally time, and then you jump. And being that you started in 2021 time frame, did you see any like COVID push, especially, people wanting to do these projects in their house? They're stuck and they're like, okay, now's the time. Did you see any like big wave happen where it's like, oh, everyone's at home like, oh, babe, we need a new fence now, and it's just like, that helped you guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of that. And really what kind of led us to hone in on the fencing industry as where we would start our business is that we saw companies around us that were booked out 6, maybe 8 months on projects because the demand was so high. And then, so we were at our previous jobs selling fences as well.
Okay.
And so we were quoting against some of these companies, and sometimes really realizing that they were charging double a normal market rate. And so we looked at it as, okay, here's an industry where we can go in and we don't have to have rock bottom prices to be competitive. We just have to be fair.
Right.
And so we can enter the market as the new guys and still win some business without having to cut our margins way down, which, we learned a lot about that after the fact too, that, about pricing and margins where we really needed to be compared to where we thought we needed to be. But yeah, so that was kind of one of the motivators for us, was that people were spending time in their backyards, at their home, working from home. And so they were still spending all their money. Like spending didn't really dip that much except for a short time, but they were redirecting that spending towards home improvement.
Right.
So it really was something that helped us to enter the market and see a lot of demand to support our business early on.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense when it comes to that aspect. So how is it working with your siblings? I hear a lot of stories of like spouses working together, and it's just like that's a different dynamic because like they take it home, and how do you separate that line? But how is it working with a sibling? I don't think I've interviewed someone that it's siblings that run it together.
Yeah, so there's been challenges
Yeah.
because I do see the dynamic of you let people get away with more sometimes that
Mhm.
you wouldn't let, just any employee do a certain thing, but because it's your brother, you kind of let
Yeah.
it slide for a little longer than it should. And so there's been challenges that we've worked through, but overall, we've got each other's backs and we would do anything for each other. Growing up, I was kind of, like I said, the mediator
Yeah.
in the family because I was the middle of the three of us. So I got along with both of them really well.
Hmm.
But sometimes they would butt heads growing up. And so coming into this, I think it's really grown our relationships because we've learned a lot more about each other and how to work through those dynamics, and to the point where for the most part, we're utilizing our individual strengths and coming together as a team.
Right.
And there's some arguments, some debates about how we should handle certain situations, but at the end of it, we're usually all on the same page and we
Okay.
work together with whatever the decision was.
Yeah. I love that you said the individual strengths, like how your background is in something and then your brother's background is maybe something different, and how you both collectively come together to still, get to the overall goal, which is to make money.
Yep.
Let's be honest about it.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
It is way too much work to do it for free.
Right. Right. Which brings me back to the point where you said coming in as the new guys and entering the market as fair,
Hmm.
but then realizing like, you know what, maybe these comps, we should be charging a little bit more. Talk to us about that, because it's always easy when you're the new guy where it's just like, oh, I just want the business, I just want the business. How did you guys come to that realization where it's like, you know what, we actually know our value now and we know what other people are doing, we need to up these prices, still be
Yeah.
fair, but like, how did you guys come to that turning point and make that decision collectively?
So the challenge was, so the way we started our business was a little bit unique in that Zach and I were co-owners.
Okay.
But Zach did not leave the other job when we started the company. So
Okay.
essentially what happened is I left, that job completely and went full-time into this. And so Zach kind of stayed on the sidelines a little bit, and he was still working that job to, to give us the cash flow that we needed to really
Right.
ramp up the
Right.
business, but also, so anytime we had to make major decisions, him and I would talk. But on the average day to day, I was pretty much handling everything as far as the daily business goes.
Mhm.
And so early on, it was me going out and doing the estimates, booking the appointments, managing the project once it was sold, And so there was a lot of what would be overhead in our business model today wrapped up into, well, it's just my time. So
Right.
there was no tangible cost for it.
Okay.
So early on, we started with margins that were way too low. But that being said, I mean, we had to earn customers' business without really having any reputation of our own.
Right.
So we've built the company on a brand that is all about customer service and quality. And we don't always get it right. Like
Mhm.
working with construction, things don't always go as planned. The quality is not always where we expect it to be. But we've always had the mindset that like we are here to take care of our customers and we're going to do right by them. And what we've learned over the last 2 years is sometimes that costs a lot of money.
Right.
And to have the people and the expertise and the tools and the equipment, and then to be able to say, hey, that's not right, we're going to go back and redo it.
Mhm.
Like you've got to have the money from your business to be able to take care of those customers.
Yeah.
So over time, we've realized, what some of those expenses really look like. And so we've had to raise our gross margins along the way as we've built the business, we've had to say, okay, there's real overhead here that we need to be covering. So
Yeah.
treating customers fairly, but offering, really high quality service and really high quality materials and labor, that has come with, to put us at what I would call a fair price,
Mhm.
but we're really at the higher end as far as price is concerned compared to a lot of other fence companies.
Interesting.
So it's been a challenge and definitely a learning experience for us to kind of see that develop over
Mhm.
time. and things that I never would have guessed 2 years ago coming into this that we've had to kind of implement today to build our business to where it is and how it's structured. So.
Right. And as we talk about comps and other businesses, and I guess in your field, like I've talked to chefs, I've talked to shops. Yours is kind of unique in this way because it's not like a brick and mortar, more so of a customer based service, if that makes sense. What have you seen over the years being in the industry that you are in of getting customers? Like I said, I've talked to so many other people where it's literally the customer kind of going to them.
Yeah.
But yours is different. Like I feel like you have to like reach out and just find the customer, because it's not every day where someone's like, fence, like I need a fence.
Exactly.
So in your last couple of years, how have you managed to find your customers, or what does that look like for your industry to get your business?
Yeah. Well, I hope nobody listening or watching is waiting for some like wealth of knowledge to flow out of me at this point, because that really has been one of the biggest challenges for us is kind of learning as we go.
Yeah.
What are the things that work for marketing and for gathering those customers, and what doesn't work? And unfortunately, like those are some of the most expensive lessons that we've learned were some of the marketing things that did nothing for us. And sometimes that's a 12-month contract we locked ourselves into that just essentially amounted to nothing. So it's been challenging. One of the greatest things that we've had as far as being cost effective and really having the biggest impact on our business is going, in and installing a fence for one customer. And then especially in newer neighborhoods, we see this where the next door neighbor says, hey, I need a fence too. And I've just watched you guys do this one. And so we've had some neighborhoods where it's a domino effect and 6 houses all within, one block end up doing business with us. So that can bring that customer acquisition cost down.
Right.
But outside of that, there's been a lot of learning. There's been a lot of mistakes. And I think we do a lot on social media, which we're trying to improve everything that we do and trying to expand. But that's been one of our best things. But really just, community outreach, letting customers know that we're there, and who we are as a company and what we stand for. And then just trying to make sure that any of those opportunities where you have a friend or a neighbor that might need a project also, that we're positioning ourselves to kind of capitalize on that business.
Yeah, no, the domino effect in neighborhoods are so real. We got work done on our house because someone down the street got something, and we're like, we really like how that looks. No, I always say word of mouth. It's not always about what you know, but who you know, and sometimes who you don't know. But your work speaks for itself. What are your thoughts along that line? Social media, you said you're trying to do your best on it. What are your thoughts as what I would call a babypreneur? Like you're still in the the infancy stages of it. In your opinion, what are some of your okay, these work, but what are some of the challenges when it comes to social media wise? Because it's a beast that's not going anywhere. And as an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, what are the things that you're finding everyone said that this was going to work for me, but it's just it's not clicking somewhere. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I think consistency is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And we had a challenging time as we came towards the end of 2022, which was our first year. So we were about 6 months into the business and growing faster than we expected to at that point.
Okay.
And we reached a point where I was out in the field every day building fences. And I don't know if I want all of our listeners to hear this, but prior to us starting this company, my brother Zach and I had built 64 lineal feet of fence.
Okay.
So we built a pen for his dogs.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 years before we started the company. And outside of that, our knowledge base was knowing what the installers that we had used previously did and how they did it. But we had never really had that hands-on experience with fencing.
Yeah.
So we were coming in with more expertise, from the sales side, and saying, okay, we know how things are done. We know how to quote the jobs, and we know how to sell the job. But we were never the hands-on people.
Got it.
And so for us to kind of end up in that position where we were so overwhelmed with work Now, granted, our company was really small at that point, but we were so overwhelmed that I started building fences 5-6 days a week instead of running the business.
Okay.
And so what happened then is we got away from the social media and the marketing because I didn't have time. And we literally reached a point where I had customers calling me. I had like the company cell phone and we were getting messages for customers that wanted quotes that I never called them back.
Oh, yeah.
Just because we were so overwhelmed that I couldn't get to everybody. And so that was a big challenge for us kind of coming out of that season and into the next year, that now we had let our marketing slip and we weren't able to really, it took time and energy to really get that ramped back up.
Yeah.
And if I could go back and fix one thing, that might be it. That's definitely one of the key things for us, is that we kind of took our foot off the gas pedal on that side and, got so focused on the day-to-day trying to build fences that we didn't maintain that consistency.
Yeah.
So.
No, I thank you for sharing that. And like I said, the beauty of the show is to debunk entrepreneurship. And these are some of the challenges that they face. And because social media is such a riveting aspect of it, it's like, which side of the coin do you pick? Do I push the social media side, because I'm getting exposure for my business, or do you do your business and lose the social media side? Let me know in the comments which one do you think, or some tips or advice that we can take away from this episode. We're going to hit a quick commercial break. We're here with Chris, and we'll see you on the other side.
At Cape Fear Community College's Small Business Center, our mission is clear: to boost the number and success rate of viable small businesses in New Hanover and Pender County. We offer high-quality, readily accessible assistance to prospective and existing small business owners, leading to job creation and retention. As a community-based provider, we offer education, training, counseling, referral, and information services, all at no charge. Remember, the business starts with an idea. The success begins with a plan. We're here to help you with that plan. To get started, visit our website at cfcc.edu/SBC or give us a call at 910-362-7469. Let's get started.
Discover the innovations shaping the future of our oceans. Join us on September 17th at the UNCW's Burney Center. Engage with leading experts like Mark Huang from Sea Ahead and Susan Casey, author of Voices in the Ocean. Participate in dynamic panel discussions on building a North Carolina Blue Hub, empowering communities, startup innovations in sustainability, and funding ocean innovations. Early registration ends August 1st, so register now to secure your seat. Be part of the change. See you there.
All right, guys, we are back from the break. I hope you got whatever you needed to get. We're here with Chris from, I'm going to get it right this time. I'm not. Fencing Bros. No.
But which fencing? No, Husek Brothers Fensing.
I knew it. Husek Brother Fencing. I said it wrong when I opened it up the last time.
Yeah, but that's
Guys.
We answer to anything, really.
Except for the boosting of illegal stuff. And
selling stolen stereos and sword fighting. We don't get into it much.
So they're not going to answer that to that, Fencing Bros. But if we're talking about the stuff in the backyard, these are your guys.
That's us. Yeah.
So in the second half of the interview, I let you know off camera, there's so many questions that I have about fencing. It's such a particular industry. We're here in North Carolina. We run into a whole bunch of hurricanes. What's the best advice that you can give when it comes to picking out fencing or prepping your fence when it comes to hurricane? We're about to enter hurricane season soon.
Yeah. So this might sound like a sales pitch.
Yeah.
And hopefully it won't, but really, you cannot prep your fence for a hurricane.
Yeah.
The prep for a hurricane for your fence is the people who built it and how they built it.
Got it.
There's really not much you can do. Once the hurricane's, knocking at our door, there is no prep that's going to save it. Now, if your trash can is going to blow across the yard and knock out a section of your fence, something like that, maybe you put the trash can away. But as far as the fence goes, it just is what it is at that point.
Yeah.
Making sure your gates are closed and they're all latch good, that type of stuff, so they don't swing open and rip off. Is probably about the only thing you could do. So
you guys, you like hurricane season. You get the calls afterwards, right?
It sounds so terrible. But
yeah, it sounds terrible. I mean, it is what it is. That's your industry. So you guys look forward to hurricane season.
We know that if a hurricane comes, we're going to be busier.
Right.
We don't wish ill will on anybody, but there is, there's an increase in demand, obviously.
Of course.
And so we had early this year a storm that came through that had some like 70 or 80 mile an hour gusts, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And we sent out an email to our customer base and just said, hey, if you guys had any issues, let us know. Some of those customers had never purchased from us. So they had an older fence, or maybe they even bought it. I think in a couple cases they had bought a fence from somebody else, but they were on our email list. And so we got responses back, hey, we did have this happen, or, whatever situation. And that was just with not a named storm, but something that just, blew through overnight one time. So there's definitely, wind is the biggest factor for fences. For sure.
Of course. And when it comes to picking the best wood for your fence, is there a particular like, this is more sturdier than if you pick?
Yeah. So
I don't know.
pretty much in Eastern North Carolina, it's almost exclusively treated pine that's used to build wooden fences. So we do different types. We do wood, we do chain link, vinyl, which is like the white. A lot of people say plastic. But if you're in the industry, it's vinyl fencing. And then aluminum. So the black aluminum, which a lot of people think are wrought iron. Most of the ones you see today are made out of aluminum.
Okay.
And so there's different levels of durability and different price points with those. But looking at wood fences, we see some challenges because, decades ago, fences were treated differently. The wood material was treated differently than it is today. And so you would get a longer lifespan out of their old treating processes and what the EPA allows today.
Right.
And so the lifespan on that wood has come down. And so now with newer fences, there are some things you can do in choosing, thicker pickets, for instance, for the fence, and in how the fence is constructed. And whether the horizontal rails that all the pickets are nailed to, if those are 2x4s or 2x3s. So, and then there's pre-made panels that you can go and buy at some of the big box stores that are really not built to the standards that you would want necessarily to build a fence around your backyard. So there's a lot of nuances to that. One of the challenges, though, is that as a consumer, if you're not in the industry, you really don't know. And even looking at a fence that's been built, a week after it was built, for somebody who doesn't have the knowledge base of what to look for and what to check, they can't tell if it's a good fence or not, or if it was built correctly or not. They can't tell how far the posts are in the ground. They can't tell how much concrete was used. They can't see how long the nails are that were used to put it together. And even the things they can see, they might not even know what they're looking at. So it's challenging in that aspect. And sometimes, for the most part, fence companies around this area do a really good job. But we definitely see sometimes some things that are really subpar, and it's concerning because as consumers are putting out a lot of money and not necessarily getting what they paid for.
Yeah. That's interesting that you talked about the post because before you came in, Vance and I were talking about it, and he was just like, oh, yeah, like, what is the industry stand? Like, how far does the post need to go down where it's secure enough? How far does it need to go down?
That's a great question. And so you said the industry standard, and the answer is there's not an industry standard.
Oh, see?
Because there's kind of a regional standard.
Okay.
And the reason is you want this fence post to be below the frost line, which we don't really worry about here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But if you go up into the Northeast or other northern parts of the country, they're setting their posts like 3 to 4 feet in the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Whereas here it's typically like 24 to 30 inches for most fence styles. So because we don't have to worry about getting below the frost line here. And so that's a little bit different. And then getting into how much concrete is used on those posts, like a lot of companies are doing things different ways. And it's one of those things that there's no way to really go back and inspect what was done because it's all underground.
Wow. The more you know, man. I'm just like super fascinated. Again, I don't really get to talk to many people in this space, but I feel so educated now. I'm going to go home in my backyard and just like shake my fence, see if it's durable. Shaking it's a great thing. If I come out and I look at an old fence and somebody's wondering like, should we just fix this or should we,
maybe think about just replacing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I'm going to do is start shaking
Shake it.
posts. See how much they move.
knew that.
See if you hear them cracking.
Okay.
So when you get into like treated lumber, the treated pine we were talking about that's used, so it's typically rotting about 3 to 4 inches underground.
Okay.
It's not rotting all the way at the bottom of the post 2 feet underground, and it's not really rotting above ground. So the problem area at 3 to 4 inches below the surface, if you think about when the wind is pushing on that fence, it's trying to snap it like a toothpick.
Gotcha.
And so if you have a bunch of rot right in that area, and that happens because the microorganisms attack the post in that area, if that rot has happened, the post can look great above ground, and enough wind comes and they're just going to break off.
Yeah.
And that's something we see usually beyond the 10-year mark, closer to like 20 years or so.
Okay.
But there's things that you can do to prevent that. Like they have these new composite post sleeves. They've been on the market for a while now, but it's basically like a plastic tube essentially that goes around the base of the post that's going to be in the ground.
Okay.
And so it keeps the dirt from contacting the post where those microbes would start.
Gotcha.
And so the treatment on that wood today, it's good for a while, but it doesn't last forever. And so once that starts to wear off, think of it like sunblock, eventually it's going to wear out, and then you're going to start experiencing those issues. And then the other thing that they're offering now, and this is really new to the market, is that you can actually retreat the posts in those areas.
Stop it.
So you might not know this. Most people don't.
No.
I never knew it until I heard about this, but wooden power poles that you drive by, they're retreated every so often.
Okay.
And the way that they do that is they'll go and they'll drill a hole in the base of the post.
Yeah.
And it's basically like a stick of treatment that goes into that hole and then it dissolves. And so it's retreating that wood right where that problem area is. And so now they've taken that and they've kind of scaled it down to where you can do the same thing on a fence post.
Yeah.
And every, 5, 10, 15 years, you can go back and do that and prolong the life of the post.
Wow. The more you know. I'm sitting here like, I would have never known that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The best thing that we recommend to our customers, if it fits with what their aesthetic is that they want,
Yeah.
and the neighborhood regulations and things like that, to go to aluminum if you're not after privacy.
Okay.
It essentially lasts forever. Outside of a tree falling on it, it's really not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It has no wind resistance to speak of.
Gotcha.
So that's really good. And then if you do need the privacy, to go with a vinyl fence. And I always tell people a vinyl fence is more expensive than wood,
Okay.
but it's cheaper than buying a wood fence twice. And if you want a wood fence, we'll build it for you,
Yeah.
but you're going to need another one at some point because it just doesn't last forever.
Right.
There are things you can do, like we talked about with the treatment or the post protectors or staining the fence, that are going to prolong the life. But at best, you get 20, maybe 25 years if you take really good care of it.
Right.
And so if you plan to be in that home forever, I can tell you in 25 years when you need to buy another fence, it's probably going to be at least twice as much as it is today.
Absolutely.
So, or you can buy a vinyl or aluminum fence and have it forever. So,
Wow. Everyone, go in your backyard after this episode. Go look at your fence.
yeah, or call us and we'll do it for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Call him. Yeah, because it's starting to get hot outside. So I know if you're like me, like I have another question, and this is more personal to me, like standing water spots in the backyard.
Yep.
That's probably really bad for the fence.
It's bad if it's wood. And it's bad if it's chain link. Because so chain link fencing, typically you see galvanized, which is like the silver look. We do see on some of those kind of around the 20-year mark or so, maybe not even that long. If there's a lot of standing water, they'll start to rust out right near the top of the soil.
Got it.
And so then you can have issues with that. And if the posts are all rusted out, it doesn't matter how good the rest of it is. It's all got to come down and be replaced. So standing water is an issue for chain link. It doesn't really affect vinyl or aluminum.
Gotcha.
But with wood, that treated lumber is meant to, the pickets are only good for being in the weather. So like getting rained on and then drying back out.
Yeah.
If they're in standing water all the time, they're going to rot out. And even what we see is if the bottom of that picket is touching the soil, it's constantly wicking that moisture up, and the bottom 6 inches or so of the picket will rot out, sometimes within a couple years.
Oh, gosh.
So standing water is an enemy for wood fences for sure.
So I might need. No, I'm just. I'm just.
So
joking.
we're talking about your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this has been so very informative. Like I said, I would have never known any of this. I do have. Look, I'm like, Vance, you got any questions that you need to ask about your home while we have them here? Yeah, I would have never known that.
Yeah, that's new. And that's, one of the things really is like, as a consumer, unless you're moving into a house that doesn't have a fence and you're buying one all the time, which never happens, you're buying a fence once, twice, maybe 3 times in your life.
Right.
Like, we don't expect our customers to be experts.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go out to dinner and you kind of target the same types of restaurants, like, you learn what's good and what's not good.
Yeah.
And you learn about the quality and what you like and what you don't. But you don't get that opportunity with buying fences because you just don't do it enough in your life to really have the education that you need to make really informed decisions. And so I don't care if somebody buys from us or the next company or whoever. I just want them to be informed and make sure that they're getting what it is that they wanted,
Right.
and that it's at, the price point that they were after. And, of course, quality is an influence on that.
All right, man. You guys have been educated, and listen, I know some of these people that are watching, you need to replace your fence. Like, you do. Go out and shake it. If it's about to crack or it sounds like it, you got the person right here. Chris, this has been so informative. I do have my last question.
Yeah. Which,
again, we've kind of centered on how you're just such a unique industry and your perspective of being a new entrepreneur. But my last question, if you had any advice to someone that's looking to be an entrepreneur, what would that be?
So I'll tell a little bit of a story for that.
You got
got
it.
time real quick.
Yes.
So when we started the business, we knew it was going to be hard. We weren't 18 years old and completely naive. And a few months into the business, I thought, okay, this is probably 5 times harder than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
And then 6 months into the business, I thought it's 10 times harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And now at 2 years, it's 50 or 100 times harder. And so I think the biggest lesson I could say is, be ready for a challenge, but don't be scared of the challenge.
I like that.
And for me, there are the scale of the challenges that I deal with on a daily or weekly or monthly basis has continually gotten larger and larger and larger over those 2 years.
Okay.
But the really nice thing is that my experience in dealing with those challenges has gotten bigger as well. And so being able to say, you know what, the problems I deal with today are problems that would have broken me 2 years ago, and so to be able to kind of start to see the payoff on those long days and difficult days and hard problems to work through is something that I don't think you have any way to really know that that's coming if you just persevere through those challenges.
Right.
But to see it, kind of in hindsight, and to say, I'm so grateful to myself for getting through those challenges every day, that I can look back and say, man, look what I've been able to accomplish.
That's right.
Look at the person this has created, because it's not the same person I was 2 years ago. And you can never thank yourself enough for that.
That was a great answer. And even reflecting back, entrepreneurship is so scary when you make that first leap I don't even know how to explain it unless you've been in it. It's just like, oh God, what did I do? But then you work at it and you keep working at it till you realize we've hit our 1 year mark. Like, man, look at how much I've done. Look at the journey. Look how much I've learned. And there's nothing I can't do now until you hit your next
exactly
valley and you're like, what did I do now? But no, I think your answer is beautiful. And thank you for educating us on all things fencing.
All things fencing.
All things
I don't
fencing.
even know it all.
Hey, no, but listen, Vance and I were just like, wow, you can treat your fence. We're stuck on that. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thank you guys for watching this episode. Thanks to the bossy man over there. Thank you to the sponsors that made this episode and the season happen. Until next time, I'm Rama T. Go out and support a local business. Bye. Hey guys, it's me, Rama T, and I hope at the end of this episode you felt super inspired to shop within your local community. But make sure to tune in next week where I'll have another entrepreneur to talk about their journey here only on YouTube.